So I just cracked a little over 600 hard miles on the Onewheel GT. I think it's time for a proper review. Check out the damage on this thing. I'll be going over a bunch of stuff such as the stock tire it comes with, the foot pads, the shapings, the pushback, all that kind of stuff. Before we get into the review, just want to let you guys know I have some memberships now that you can use on YouTube that you'll be able to see any content coming up early, and we'll have some extra juicy stuff for you in the future if you're a member. So let's start with the shapings. So my favorite was Flow. Flow felt to me more like what Mission was, except for it didn't really give you as much clearance when you're going uphill because it'd be kind of a delayed response to raise the nose. Highline felt like kind of more like a Delirium, but like a smoother Delirium. It had a little bit more torque and it was a little bit tighter. It's kind of hard to explain, but I think Highline would feel best on up and down hills and varied terrain to where you're not sure, but you want that extra torque. And then we got Apex, which is a mode that I rarely use unless I'm really trying to get up a steep incline that has a little bit of a rough terrain, because it really does give you that extra torque. But it feels too bouncy for me in general, but I would imagine it feels good on street. But it's too tight and aggressive of a mode for me for most of my needs, because it really wants to climb and bounce up everything when normally you would absorb it. All right, let's talk about range. I noticed that it does have about 20% less range than an extended battery XR. But actually with this board, I didn't really feel a whole lot of battery sag, all the way down to about 20 to 30% battery. The stock tire, this one's an interesting one. So I think it actually rides great out of the box on the street. But once you get into the trails, it's a bit hard for more advanced trail riders. You're gonna be bouncing much more than you're used to. But I think for the everyday rider, it's a great ride out of the box. But just obviously be careful and make sure you lower the PSI when on the trails, because this is one hard tire that's gonna last a while, but it's gonna bounce you around a bit when you hit rocks and roots. All right, let's talk about the foot pads. The front foot pad would eventually start to hurt my heel as I'm bouncing around on the trails, because it kind of, the way that it's contoured, this piece will start to dig into your heel a little bit, and it gets a little bit uncomfortable at times. And after a while, you know, when you're bouncing around on trails, since it is concaved like that, it slides your heel down on the bounces, whereas a flat one, your heel would bounce up and down versus sliding in. Usually on street, I don't have that issue. All right, the weight. This baby is heavy. But when it comes to bonking, nudging, and doing all of my other normal utility tricks and getting around on the board, I don't really notice the weight quite as much. All right, the pushback. It was pretty bad when first released, and now they've tweaked it and fine-tuned it, and it feels pretty solid right now. I feel like I don't really hit it until 22, where it really starts to kick back, and I still feel like I can lean into about 25 confidently. Let's talk about clearance next. When you're just riding around the board on the street, you don't really notice any clearance issues until you're on the trails trying to go uphill or pushing and getting into pushback and having to deal with kind of braking while you're already in a Captain Morgan state, which kind of brings me to carvability. So the carvability feels a little bit boaty compared to the XR, but it's kind of its own thing now, I feel like. With the XR hub mod, I feel like I'm way more comfortable and locked in now, and I'm hoping with the new Enduro tire release, we're gonna be able to get that out of a stock hub. But for the most part, what I mean by boaty is it takes a little bit longer to initiate and engage into the turn, and it feels ever so slightly delayed. All right, let's talk about the torque. One of my favorite things about this new board is the ability to just accelerate as hard and fast as you want to. Obviously, there's limitations. If you're in gravel or something, it's gonna spin out, but it's really nice to be able to just lean into it and get up to speed. And same thing with not having nosedives become a thing anymore, unless obviously you're trying to push through to 29, but most people aren't gonna be riding like that. All that being said, the overall feel of the board after the update, I think it's a ton of fun. It's a whole new different ride. You gotta kind of throw the XR out the door, pretend you never rode the XR and get on it and just try to get used to it in its own right. And I think most people will enjoy it. All right, let's go over a pros and cons list. So let's start with the pros. Out of the box, it's a better ride on street than the stock XR was. Better top speeds. It's really strong on uphills. It eliminates nosedives for the most part. The shapings feel quite nice and different. All right, let's go to the cons. It's really heavy. The stock tire is really hard and really bouncy on most types of trails. The stock foot pads, can hurt your heels a little bit and throw your feet out of place sometimes. And it's a little bit of a boatier ride. So is it worth a buy? I think if you're a beginner or intermediate rider, or you're not really caring about trails too much, I think totally. Grab the thing, it's a ton of fun. It's just a totally different ride. It's a great second step to your arsenal, or it's a great first one wheel. But if you're a more advanced rider, I'd say just think for a second and try one of your friends or try a demo board and see if you like it, because on trails you will get bounced around a bit. So I would say wait until you can put a new tire on it that's made specifically to replace the stock tire, or until you have the extra fundage to do the XR hub swap onto it. If you like this review, please let me know. Subscribe, like, do all that stuff, and I'll see you guys around.